Let's continue reading again. "Glad to find you so merry, my girls," said a cheery voice at the door, and the actors and audience turned to welcome a tall, motherly lady with a "Can I help you" look about her, which was truly delightful. She was not elegantly dressed, but a noble looking woman, and the girls thought the grey cloak and the unfashionable bonnet covered the most splendid mother in the world. "Well, dearies, how have you got on today? There was much to do, getting the boxes ready to go tomorrow, that I didn't come home to dinner. Has anyone called, Beth? How is your cold, Meg? Joe, you look tired to death. Come, kiss me, baby." When making these material inquiries, Mrs. March got her wet things off and her warm slippers on, and sitting down in the easy chair, drew Amy to her lap, preparing to enjoy the happiest hour of a busy day. The girls flew about, trying to make things comfortable, each in her own way. Meg arranged the tea table. Joe brought wood and set chairs, dropping, overturning, and clattering everything she touched. Beth trotted to and fro between the parlor kitchen, quiet and busy, while Amy gave directions to everyone as she sat with her hands folded. As they gathered about the table, Mrs. March said, with a particularly happy face, "I've got a treat for you after supper." A quick, bright smile went round the room, the streak of sunshine. Beth clapped her hands, regardless of the biscuit she held. Joe tossed up her napkin, crying, "A letter! A letter! 3 cheers for father!" "Yes, a nice long letter. He is well and thinks he shall get through the cold season better than we feared. He sends all sorts of loving wishes for Christmas. And an especial message for you girls," said Mrs. March, patting her pocket as if she had got a treasure there. "Hurry and get done. Don't stop to quirk your little fingers and simper on your plate, Amy," cried Jo, choking her tea and dropping her bread, butter side down, on the carpet in the haste to get that treat. Beth ate no more, but crept away to sit in her shadowy corner and brood over the delight to come till the others were ready. "I think it was so splendid in father to go as chaplain when he was too old to be drafted, and not strong enough to be a soldier," said Meg warmly. "Don't I wish I could go to the as a drummer, a vivan, what's its name, or a nurse, or I could be near him and help him," exclaimed Joe with a groan. "It must be very disagreeable to sleep in a tent and eat all sorts of bad tasting things and drink out of a tin mug," sighed Amy. "When will he come home, Mommy?" asked Beth with a little quiver in her voice. "Not for many months, dear, unless he's sick. He will stay and do his work faithfully for as long as he can, and we won't ask him to come back a minute sooner than he has spared. Now come here and listen to the letter." They all drew to the fire, Mother in the big chair and Beth at her feet, Meg and Amy perched on either arm of the chair, and Joe leaning on the back, where no one could see any sign of emotion if the letter should happen to be touching. Very few letters were written in those hard times that were not touching, especially those with fathers sent home. In this one, it said of hardships endured, dangers faced, or the homesickness conquered. It was cheerful, hopeful letter, full of lively descriptions of camp life, marshes, military news, and only at the end did the writer's heart overflow with fatherly love and longing for the little girls at home. "Give them all of my dear love and a kiss. Tell them I think of them by day, pray for them by night, and find my best comfort in their affection at all times. A year seems very long to wait before I see them, but remind them that I will, and while we wait, we may all work so that these hard days need not be wasted. I know they will remember all I said to them, that they will be loving children to you, will do their duty faithfully, fight their bosom enemies bravely, and conquer themselves so beautifully that when I come back to them, I may be fonder and prouder than ever of my little women. Everybody sniffled when they came to that part. Jo wasn't ashamed of the great tear that dropped off the edge of her nose, and Amy never minded the rumbling of her curls as she hid her face on her mother's shoulder and sobbed out, "I'm a selfish girl, but I truly tried to be better. So he mayn't be disappointed in me, and by the by." "We all will," cried Meg. "I think too much of my books and hate to work, but I won't anymore if I can help it. I'll try and be what he loves to call me, a little woman, and not be rough and wild, but do my duty here instead of wanting to be somewhere else," said Jo, thinking that keeping her temper at home was a much harder task than facing a rebel or two down south. Beth said nothing, but wiped away her tears with a blue army sock and began to knit with all her might, losing no time in doing the duty that lay nearest her, while she resolved in her quiet little soul to be all that her father had hoped to find her when the year brought round the happy coming home. Mrs. March broke the silence that followed Jo's words by saying in her cheery voice, "Do you remember how we used to play Pilgrim's Progress when we were little things? Nothing delighted you more than have me tie my piece bags on your back for burdens, give you hats and sticks and rolls of paper, and let you travel through the house from the cellar, which was the city of destruction, up to the housetop, where you had all the lovely things you could collect to make a celestial city. What fun it was, especially going by the lions and fighting the Apollyon and passing through the valley where the hobgoblins were," said Jo. "I liked the place where the bundles fell off and tumbled downstairs," said Meg. "I don't remember much about it, except that I was afraid of the cellar and the dark entry, and always liked the cake and milk we had up at the end. It was too I was too old for such things. I'd rather like to play it over again," said Amy, who began to talk of renouncing childish things at a mature age of 12. "We never are too old for this, my dear, because it's a play, and we are playing all the time in one way or another. Our burdens are here, our road is before us, and the longing of goodness and happiness is the guide that leads us through many troubles and mistakes to the peace which is a true celestial city. Now, my little pilgrims, suppose you begin again, not in play, but in earnest, and see how far you can each go before father comes home." "Really, mother? Where are our bundles?" asked Amy, who was a very literal young lady. "Each of you told what your burden was just now, except Beth. I rather think she hasn't got any," said her mother. "Yes, I have. Mine is dishes and dusters, and envying girls with nice pianos, and being afraid of people." Beth's bundle was such a funny one that everybody wanted to laugh, but nobody did, for it would have hurt her feelings very much. "Let us do it," said Meg thoughtfully. "It's only another name for trying to be good, and the story may help us, for though we do want to be good, it's hard work, and we forget and don't do our best." We were in the slough of despond tonight, and mother came and pulled us out as help did in the book. We ought to have our roll-on directions like Christian. "What shall we do about that?" asked Jo, delighted with the fancy which lent a little romance to the very dull task of doing her duty. "Look under your pillows Christmas morning, and you'll find your guidebook," replied Mrs. March. They talked over the new plan while old Hannah cleared the table. Then out came the 4 little work baskets, and the needles flew as the girls made sheets for Aunt March. It was an uninteresting sewing, but tonight no one grumbled. They adopted Joe's plan of dividing the long seams into four parts and calling the quarters Europe, Asia, Africa, and America, and in that way got on capitally, especially when they talked about the different countries as they stitched their way through them. At 9, they stopped work and sang, as usual, before they went to bed. No one but Beth could get much music out of the old piano, but she had a way of softly touching the yellow keys and making a pleasant accompaniment to the simple songs they sang. Med had a voice like a flute, and she and her mother led a little choir. Amy chirped like a cricket, and Jo wandered through the airs at her own street will, always coming out at the wrong place with a croak or a quaver that spoiled the most pensive tune. They had always done this, from the time they could lisp. Crinkle, crinkle, ittle, ta. And it had become a household custom, for the mother was a born singer. The first sound in the morning was her voice as she went about the house singing like a lark, and the last sound at night was the same cheery sound, for the girls never grew old, for the familiar lullaby. We will be ending here. I hope you make good use of it. Like, subscribe at your will. Have a lovely day ahead.